First up this evening, Vasudha, to those fierce protests by the opposition in Parliament against the Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin Bill, shortly being referred to as the VBG Ramg Bill, which seeks to replace the landmark Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, or MNREGA. The opposition, which held posters of Mahatma Gandhi, staged protests accusing the government of insulting the Mahatma, imposing Hindi names on bills, and also questioned several sections of the proposal in the new bill, including one that puts 40% fiscal onus on state governments, and the intent of it, Vasudha.
In fact, the update is that the bill is going to be taken up for passing in the next 2 days. Congress has issued a whip asking all its Lok Sabha MPs to be present for the next 3 days to oppose this bill tooth and nail. Despite opposition protests, Union Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan introduced the bill in the Lok Sabha, and he made a spirited defense of it, arguing that here was a consensus over the need for revising certain sections of MNREGA Act. He said that the spirit and letter of the new bill is entirely consistent with Mahatma Gandhi's principles and that there was no question of an insult to the father of the nation. He also pointed out that the new bill increases the number of days of employment guarantee from 100 days to 125 days. He asked the opposition not to politicize the bill. Listen in to reactions from the Parliament before we head to our first panel discussion this evening.
उन्हीं के विचारों पर आधारित, पंडित दीनदयाल उपाध्याय जी के विचारों पर आधारित गरीब कल्याण की कई योजनाएं ये सरकार मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में चला रही है। और जहां तक मनरेगा का सवाल है, माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, कांग्रेस तो यूपीए तो केवल मनरेगा लेके आई थी, लेकिन 2,13,220 करोड़ रुपया यूपीए की सरकार ने मनरेगा पर खर्च किए थे। हमने 8,53,810 करोड़ रुपया गरीबों के कल्याण के लिए खर्च किए और इस योजना को और मजबूत करने की कोशिश की। और आज भी माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, तकलीफ क्या है? 100 दिन की गारंटी के बजाय हम 125 दिन की गारंटी दे रहे हैं। 125 दिन की गारंटी देने का काम कर रहे हैं।
सर, जो हमारे संविधान की जो मूल भावना है कि हर एक व्यक्ति के हाथों में शक्ति होनी चाहिए, वही मूल भावना पंचायती राज में है और उस मूल भावना के विरोध है ये जो अधिनियम जो ये विधेयक आ रहा है। सर, इस विधेयक के जो प्रबंधन है जिससे रोजगार का जो अधिकार है, कानूनी अधिकार है, वो कमजोर हो रहा है, वो हमारे संविधान के विपरीत है। सर, ये हमारे इसी सदन ने ये कानून बनाया और इसी सदन ने ये अधिकार जनता को दिया है।
ओके।
सर, एक और है सर, महात्मा गांधी मनरेगा में 90% अनुदान केंद्र से आता था। इस विधेयक द्वारा ज्यादातर प्रदेशों में अब 60% आएगा, इसको घटाया गया है।
ओके।
सर, इससे प्रदेशों की अर्थव्यवस्था पर बहुत भार होगी और खास तौर से ये वे प्रदेश जिनकी अर्थव्यवस्था पहले से ही केंद्र की ओर से जीएसटी के बकाये के इंतजार में है।
ओके।
For our nation and our nation's commitment to the welfare of its most vulnerable citizens. My first objection, Mr. Speaker, as with others, is the ill-advised decision to remove the name of the father of the nation for the reasons already given, which I will not repeat. But this is not just an administrative tweak, sir. It's an assault on the very spirit and philosophical foundation of this crucial program. Mahatma Gandhi's vision of Ram Rajya was never a purely political program. It was a socio-economic blueprint rooted in the empowerment of villages, and his unwavering faith in Gram Swaraj was part of his vision of Ram Rajya. So the original act, by bearing his name, acknowledged this profound connection that true employment guarantee and upliftment must flow from the grassroots, embodying his principle of the last man first. To remove the name Mahatma Gandhi is to strip the bill of its moral compass and its historical legitimacy, and then to have 2 languages in the title, just to make the acronym VBG Ramg, is not just a violation of Article 348 as pointed out in the previous discussion, but it also reminds me of a song, of a lyric from my childhood, sir. मेरे बचपन में ये गाते थे, देखो ये दीवानो ओ दीवानो ये काम मत करो, राम का नाम बदनाम मत करो. And in this particular case, it's a real
भारतीय जनता पार्टी नाम बदलने की जो राजनीति कर रही है उसके खिलाफ है हम लोग। राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी जी जिसने देश को जगाने का काम किया, उन्हीं के नाम के खिलाफ हो गए। ये राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी और उनकी सोच जो सत्य अहिंसा का रास्ता था उसके खिलाफ है ये लोग।
आप देख सकते हैं अखिलेश जी भी पहुंच गए हैं। गांधी की जो मूर्ति होती थी पहले, वहां पर जो है अखिलेश यादव भी उस प्रोटेस्ट को ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं। आप देख रहे हैं, आप देखिए यहाँ पर प्रियंका गांधी और बाकी लोग भी हैं और ये गांधी मूर्ति के सामने ये विरोध प्रदर्शन जो है विपक्ष के सांसदों का वो लगातार।
Well, from the name to the substance to the spirit and to the contents, there are several objections raised by the opposition to that bill. Joining us this evening, Arun Nehru, Lok Sabha MP of the DMK, Anshul Avijit of the Congress, Charu Pragya of the BJP, and also Anurag Naidu, a political analyst, joins us as well, who follows the TDP very closely. The TDP, unfortunately, could not join the show this evening. My first question to you, Arun Nehru, list out the 4 key points of opposition beyond just the title and the language of it.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, madam. And very importantly, that this bill is against the federal structure. Number one. Why? Because primarily this was a statutorily central government scheme that enabled states to focus on the most vulnerable, right? Now they've shifted the burden to the state, almost 40%. And the most important thing is that they have moved this to a supply driven rather than a demand driven. The demand driven comes from the grassroots. What demand is there is where, the work is done. Now supply is actually top down. So if the government decides certain things are priority, even though the capacity of the people might not be there, the state must pick up the burden to actually exercise or execute that particular project. So that puts a lot of onus on the state without any responsibility, nor accountability, nor finance. So that's going to be a, big burden. And you must understand that the governance actually happens from the grassroots level. The union, by sitting here, does not understand that each state has different priorities. So this scheme now has, even after, the GST, the revenue sharing that not being given to the state, actually puts the onus and, statutory onus of the state to carry out without any funding or any back-end support from the union government.
Right. Charu Pragya, the technicalities aside, Mahatma Gandhi is neither an invader nor a colonizer. I don't understand what was the need to change the name and remove Mahatma Gandhi's name, because this has also led to a lot of opposition.
Good evening to both of you, and good evening to all our viewers and co-panelists. See, this is not a naming debate, Vasudha. This is a debate on governance. This is a debate on upgrading a scheme, a policy which has existed for 20 plus years. When MNREGA was born in 2005, it was a different India it was made for. Today, in 2025, India has considerably changed. But before I get into the details, do you know MNREGA was originally only NREGA? It was only NREGA. Mahatma Gandhi was also added later as an afterthought by the UPA. But what we are focusing on is the fact that India has considerably changed. Rural poverty 20 years ago was over 25%. Today, it is down to just around 4%. These things have to be kept in mind while you're upgrading a scheme, while you're ensuring and making sure that it's technologically sound. It is focusing on durable infrastructure. I'm sorry, my... Okay, sorry. Can I start again?
Yeah.
Am I audible at least? Am I audible at least?
We could hear you.
Sorry.
Please go.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Charu Pragya. And as you set your camera, let me just quote to you.
I've done that.
Section 4.5 of the bill states that the central government shall determine the state-wise normative allocation for each financial year based on objective parameters as may be prescribed by the central government. The argument is that it replaces the guarantee that the MNREGA scheme gives. Respond to that as well as you were going on.
Absolutely. No, on the contrary, it increases the guarantee that MNREGA was giving initially. I'll tell you how. One, you're sharing the cost. The onus has to be on both the state and the center. You cannot just put everything on the head of the state and then there is siphoning off of funds. Why is the opposition not talking about all those issues which have been plugged now? If there are going to be e-payments, 99.9% of e-payments will also ensure that money reaches the correct bank account. Aadhaar based verification is there. It is now going to be GPS monitored. We are focusing on long term development of India getting to Viksit Bharat. So it cannot be random groundwork anymore. And this is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, Anshu Laviji, the fact that these changes have been made, many of which are also tech centric, will only strengthen the outcomes. What would your response be?
No, I mean, my honorable counterpart from the BJP, Charu, is absolutely right. A lot has changed in the last 20 years. Your GDP has completely sunk. Your household savings are the lowest ever. Your per capita GDP is among the worst in the world. The disparity between the rich and poor has completely increased back to the days of colonialism. So much for mirroring colonialism, which the BJP does. Listen, one has no problem with strengthening a bill that exists. But then here you've changed the complete character. It's not the same bill anymore. And by the way, even if you talk about strengthening the wage payments, the Aadhaar-based wage system that exists, why wasn't it strengthened in the last 11 years? There were delays in payment. There was always the budgetary allocation of MNREGA was always lower than what was expected. It was never increased. The Prime Minister himself mocked it in Parliament. The only time MNREGA came into focus by them was during COVID, when they thought, oh my God, thank God there's a scheme like this which came was actually deployed at an hour of crisis. They have done whatever they could to contort the scheme. The scheme is no longer what it was when we envisaged it in 2005, when the economy was strong and the effects of 19-1 reform was beginning to take shape, when real wages were higher and the GDP was going to be more than 8%. Now it's completely sunk. I understand the need for a compensatory state. God knows money has to be given to the people. But this kind of over-centralization from a rights-based scheme, you come to a discretionary scheme in which the tyranny of the executive is what matters. This normative allocation.
Okay, you're making an important point there, Anshul Abhijit. Let me get Anurag Naidu here. Anurag Naidu, there are 4 points of contention. Leave the name aside. I'll get to the name later. The points of contention, one, is that it replaces the guarantee that MNREGA gave, which was a safety net, with a sense of discretion. Number two, it discredits the universal, acceptance of that scheme that's there. And number three, it puts the onus on the state government. Surely, states would be concerned about what's been considered a landmark safety net in our rural society.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Veera. And also thanks that you have not asked me a question on the name, because I don't want to give due importance to the name change. But having said that, you made 3 important points. And Veera, we need to understand why this is called as Viksit Bharat. This is talking about the new Aaj Ka Bharat. The MNREGA, what we had, was more of a freebie, if you ask me. And if you really know the situation, when I go on the ground, when I interact with the villagers, काम है, मनरेगा इज 100 दिन की गारंटी, जाओ कुछ भी करो, गड्ढा खोदो या whatever you do. These are not the assets which are going to stay forever. These are not where you are skilling your workforce. You are giving them more of a freebie. It was a political war cry. It helped you. You had a plan where you expected people, by and large, from the village community, from the rural background, to vote for you. That was it. Now we need a Bharat. If you have to compete with the likes of China and other developed economies, you need to skill your workers, and they need to be certain amount of threshold where people or the workers also needs to reach in terms of their skilling, so that they start contributing. And it's also for their larger good. Because once the schemes, let's say, they finish and somebody...
Anurag Naidu, you're making a very important point, but I was speaking to somebody in the TDP, a lot of even JDU people are concerned about the financial burden it will put on states.
Yes.
And rightly so. Let me ask this to Arun Nehru. Arun Nehru, the fact that both Charu and Anurag have pointed to the good things in the bill, including tech-centric interventions, and the fact that, the agricultural, the peak season has been put off hold, which means that there'll be more laborers that will be available for farming work. What does that mean? Is there nothing good about the bill? Clearly, there could be some thought into that, isn't it?
I am all informed, what was the thing that Madam Tharo had pointed out. I'm also with Mr. Anurag Naidu when he says that certain aspects of the bill has to, cater to the new India. We're all for it. How do you execute such a requirement from the ground is not a centralization. Today, India being so centralized, how do you know what's needed in, in a rural village in Andhra Pradesh or in Tamil Nadu? It is demand driven. Only the local people or the local officers will know. Now, secondary, you're asking the local official to carry out the work without actually getting the funding right. The states are already burdened with so much activity that the states have. States have their own priorities. Now, suddenly, you come with a top-down approach, and so, the federal government has seen that, these are the important priorities to happen, and go ahead and do it without any funding. So, we are not, this is against the federalism. The states will have its work cut out, and with the burden of executing a scheme without any funding, with actually more, burden to the states in executing a scheme. And let me also remind you, madam, that this scheme, differs from state to state, right? Something in Haryana doesn't work in Tamil Nadu. Because Tamil Nadu has different set of priorities. So, Mr. Anurag Naidu's experience on the ground, might not be, across the country. So, different states would know what's needed. Okay. And not for a central scheme which says that exactly this is the work that you should do, when it's coming from the center.
Okay.
So, this attack on federalism...
Charu Pragya, this is an attack on federalism. Let states decide what they want to do. How would you respond to that?
So, Vasudha, You're speaking to me, right, Vasudha?
Yes. Please go on, Charu.
Yes. So, okay. So, let's understand two very simple things, right? One, initially also 25% of the cost was on the state. It has been increased to 40%, but in the Northeast, it's just 10%. It's gone down. Union territories with not sufficient budget, 100% of the cost is going to be taken care of by the central government. So this argument about cost, it does not find any kind of root. Secondly, and very importantly, now we are talking about shared responsibility. Everything is going to be aligned with local conditions, sir, working with the Gram Panchayat plans. So it is not in isolation. Center is setting standards, but the states are going to implement it, but implement it with absolute accountability. This partnership model is needed in our country, and we need to acknowledge that. At the end of the day, just getting people to dig up the earth is not going to make India into Viksit Bharat, into a developed country. That is the focus. It has to be sustainable infrastructure, which goes as the country is growing into an advanced stage. And just previously, my friend from Congress, Anshul ji, was talking about India's GDP. Sir, in 2014, India's GDP was barely 1.6 trillion. In the last 10 years, it has doubled. India is now the fourth largest economy. India is the largest economy in the world. India is on a fast track to ensuring that the people of this country can become contributors to making the country developed now. This is achievement. This is achievement on ground and happening right in front of our eyes as we see in the last 10 years.
No. As you're making that point, let me just put this across before I go to Anshul Avijit. I'm also just pointing out to you section 4.6 of the bill, which states that any expenditure incurred by a state in excess of its normative allocation shall be borne by the state government in such a manner and by such procedures as may be prescribed by the central government. The argument here is that the money will be provided by the states in an extraordinary situation, but the norms will be decided by the center. Again, going back to the argument, Charu Pragya, that this is larger centralization of a large safety net scheme where the central government is abdicating its financial responsibility to the states but not abdicating its powers to decide on what to do.
No, absolutely not, Veera. And I will explain this again. Like I said, in some of the states, now the government is going to take care of 100% of the expenditure in the union territory. The same goes for the Northeast. Just 10% of the cost is borne there. And also, tell me what is wrong in better accountability and better coordination between the state and the center. If you're going to offshoot your budget, you should be careful enough to account for it in your budgeting every single year. We've seen that happen in various states in our country. You are making all kinds of crazy promises before you get elected, and then you come to the center and say, because we overpromised certain thing, we don't have any money anymore and lend us money. This is not how we are going to become developed.
By all sides.
Also see, One more very important thing. Here, you are working in alignment with Gram Panchayats. Are you trying to tell me the Gram Panchayats are not aligned with local needs? Are you trying to tell me the development that a village needs or a tier 3 or a tier 4 city needs is not aligned with what is happening locally? The center is not working in isolation ever. And when we are talking about fraud detection, when we are talking about social audits, when we are talking about
Anshul, Abhijit, respond to that.
60-day break, that 60-day break for farmers, it goes a really long way, and this is not counted in your 125.
That's an important point. Anshul, Abhijit, a lot of experts also believe that there are some schemes like the Fasal Bima Yojana which have not been able to perform to their to expected levels because the states have not been able to roll out timely payments. What do you expect will happen in MNREGA, given that this also might lead to efficient coordination between states and centre, as Charu is talking about?
What were you doing for 11 years? In 11 years, not enough job cards were given. There were untimely payments and delayed payments. You didn't have budgetary allocations. You had 11 years to fix it. Now you suddenly come up with a scheme which is completely different. I mean, you've changed the name, but you've changed the scheme as well. This was the largest job guarantee scheme in the world. And as Veera, you rightly, and Vasudha, you rightly pointed out, this was a scheme that ensured livelihood security, social welfare, and I dare say social justice as well. Now it's at the mercy and of the center of the executive, which the tyranny of which is unbound. It has become boundless now. They want to control every single scheme. You are absolutely right in pointing out that they share the money. The monetary value of the scheme is shared by both the center and the state, but they have no power to decide. The states have no power to decide what can be done with that money. This was a universal scheme. This was a decentralized scheme. And now the character of that scheme, it's become exclusionary like everything else they've done. They made everything exclusionary and I dare say eerily mimicking the colonial state, which was highly exclusionary and completely inept and incompetent, right? So talk about decolonization and the colonial mindset. What they're doing with every single step is going in the direction of the colonial state. Not to talk about the extreme disparities between wealth. I'm glad Charu mentioned that point, but she should have also mentioned the disparities in wealth. Look, we need that scheme. 20 years back, a scheme was conceived. In 20 years, we need to strengthen a scheme. But I wonder what they were doing for 11 years. It took them 7 years to have reforms in GST. They were completely asleep at the wheel.
I'll get Anurag Naidu as you respond to what Anshul Abhijit say. Let me also turn the last few minutes of the debate to the more contentious, or at least the optics angle of it. One is as far as the name is concerned, was there even a need to replace Mahatma Gandhi NDTV scheme? Could it not, whatever changes, could it not have been brought within the ambit of the existing act? And two, to the fact that there is an insinuation that constantly Hindi names are used in titles of bills, leading to perhaps isolating or alienating a large section of this country which doesn't speak Hindi.
Yeah, I think, Veera, if you ask me honestly, I see it as a totally different scheme. I don't want to relate. And that's the reason I don't want to relate it to something where you directly give a cash handout. So increasing the budget of MNREGA doesn't solve anything. You have to see I don't understand why you guys are not able to see the core reasoning behind it. The majority of so let's say any big projects, whether any infrastructure development, India is going to put for a huge infrastructure development, east, west, north, south. The state governments in this federal structure that we live in, center gives money to the state. Now this scheme, VBG Ramg, is a project-based scheme. That means the vendors who are executing this project for the national infrastructure or the state infrastructure would go out, partner with the state governments, pick up the people who can work with them, skill them up, and give them some meaningful jobs. And that is how they can contribute to the national building. What did you do with 20, 30 years? Anshul gave a big political speech, but your achievements are zero when it comes to how many people can be employed by L&T.
Naming of the schemes which the DMK has a problem with. Yeah.
How many of you can employ them?
Mr. Nehru, Charu, I'll just come to you. Arun Nehru, what is the DMK's problem with these schemes being named in Hindi or Sanskrit?
What is the basic law of the land?
Okay, we'll try fixing Mr. Nehru's connection in just a bit. Charu Pragya, DMK and a lot of other parties have been saying that why should the names be in Hindi or in Sanskrit?
But can I...
How would you respond to that?
Yes.
Very brief.
So Vasudha, first I want to touch upon what Anshul was saying about this job guarantee. Anshul, that's been increased. The guarantee used to be for 100 days. Now it's become 125. So there your argument falls
Discretionary.
absolutely flat. At the same time, the 60 days that we are giving to the farmers, they are going to come in handy all over the country. And more importantly, in 20 years, you don't think our country has advanced at all. We are supposed to be clutching at the same scheme that we held on to 20 years ago. Today, if we are upgrading it, if we are making it better, if we are giving 125 days, that's potential to earn 25% more money. And all this money will be earned while you're contributing to making your country's infrastructure
Let Anshul
durable,
respond. The last 30
sustainable,
seconds we
and
have.
better.
Anshul, respond to what Charu Pragya is saying. An upgrade was needed. You're saying not this upgrade.
No, Charu is absolutely right. Every scheme needs to be reconceived and strengthened. But here, if you're giving 125 days, it's no longer a job guarantee when it's decided by the center who gets, where first of all, the money is being allocated and who gets to do how much. Nobody, it's not a universal scheme anymore. It's an exclusionary, selective scheme. It's no longer a rights-based scheme. It was a demand-based scheme.
Why
now
do we
it's
need
a
an universal
supply-based
scheme?
because now
Who
the
will
center
make the-
decides and there's a budgetary limit also to the scheme, right? So the government has
Very
fixed
limited
the budget.
time left. Anshul, I'll have to go to your ally to give him the last word. Go ahead, Nehru.
Sir, let me just clear this. Along with Charu, Madam, and she says that there must be accountability in all that. Let's also be very clear that this entire scheme is run by the center. So the entire digital platform that's been tracking, that's been analyzing, that's been giving the work is central government. And also, since they rule most of the states, so whatever errors that was made, I think Charu Madam must also answer for all of the states also where they're ruling. So for my state where I'm ruling, the problem is this. Now, certain parameters, which is actually on the supply side, is based decided on the central government. So this 125 days is going to be unequally spread. It's not going to be spread equally across all the states. So if there are certain segments where the union government wants to focus, and if there's only in certain areas that they will give work for, so there will not be any 120 days equally between all the states. And the last point that I want to make is when we said Viksit Bharat, right, it starts from the roots. You can't fly a plane without an airport, right? So all of these rural people, they don't have a background in technology. They don't know how to launch rockets. Let's be very clear, okay? They have a pick and axe, which they can actually build for. So let's not demean the work that they have already done or doing or what they don't know. So what we're trying to do is pull up the bottom of the people with what they know. Let's be very frank about it. What they know is to work on the ground and work on, areas where you can actually build infrastructure in the rural areas.
But the BJP's argument is that they want to take them from where they are to where we are now in terms of the Viksit Bharat dream. So there are multiple arguments that's been played out, Nehru. But thanks very much for all four of you for joining us. This debate will play out, Vasudha, very intensely in Parliament in the coming days, and you'll keep focus of it.
Absolutely. There's been a whip that has been issued to both sides. So it is going to be, all present Parliament. And yes, policy making also has to represent changes of new realities.